if we look at what the outcome is and where I am right now, if people really heard what I heard from people who saw the video, you know, um, that this conversation is just like I said. They said it's a miracle, but this
Yeah.
conversation is really one to just take in for anybody listening because people thought I died that day,
Yeah.
and luckily the people that thought that they called somebody who was like, oh, actually she's at home, like, and so but I mean, it's to know that that's what it looked like on the video is
Yeah.
crazy to me.
Yeah. Out to me and told me your story. I'll give you a chance to kind of retell it so everybody kind of knows what happened to you. But you reached out to me and asked, about coming on and talking about safety, specifically ladder safety because of the incident you had. And I thought it was a great idea because one of the things that I've done in the podcast before is try to talk about safety and the
Mm.
things that can happen in your shop or just in general, right? That could potentially put you down and out. So, Angela, explain to everybody exactly what happened to you and then how it has made you kind of, you know, reevaluate how you do things.
Well, it was really honestly like a fluke accident. Nothing that we hadn't done before. I mean, when I'm on boats, like the one behind me, we're climbing on stuff.
Right.
But I had a ladder up. The boat was in the water, and we had the ladder leaning against the dock. And a boat came by on the lake, created a wake the same time. So the boat was moving the same time that I took a step. And so normally I'm not stepping when the boat rocks, I'm just holding on. Um, but I stepped at the same time, and the ladder slipped, and I fell 20 feet and landed in between two giant cleats. They're probably like 18 inches and pretty thick, solid
Right.
metal. Um, 4 inches at my head and 4 inches or 6 inches at my feet, where I would have could have hit. I hit my arm on like a smaller cleat that was probably like 12 inches. Because there's like it's a that dock is like the out tie, so that's where they have all the big boats. They have to have multiple cleats there, and different sizes. And so it really just I know what I know partly because of the people that were there. My luckily my employee was there, and I remember him checking my pulse, and he had his hand on like my chest, just like seeing, you know, kind of letting me know. I think it was like that he was there, and then he
Right.
called 911, and then I just remember a lady like doing a sternal rub on me to get me to breathe again, and talking me through it, and there was a guy in a yellow shirt. I remember it's weird what you remember, and I remember the guy in the yellow shirt, and he's like, I'm just gonna stand over here, and just was out of the way. And there was a lot of people pretty what I thought was pretty quickly, but I think it was like about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Um and they went, when EMS gets there, they go through the series of questions. So I didn't know my last name. Um I didn't know where Seattle was, and I was at the Seattle Yacht Club. I knew I was at a yacht club, but I didn't know also if I was at Queen City or Seattle Yacht Club, and they're like right by each other. I knew the exact boat I was on, but I didn't know why I was there at the boat. Um, and I think the birthday one, it is funny because they're like, "Do you know your birthday?" And I was like, "It's Sunday," because my birthday was Sunday, coming up. And they're like, "Okay, we'll take that." I was a C spine injury. It's a catastrophic fall. And luckily, I didn't like no spinal cord damage, no nerve damage. The only broken, and I say only because of how far I fell, was just like my hip socket, hairline fracture in my
Wow.
hip socket. And and then obviously a lot of like bruising, tissue damage, things like that. So, and then you think about like the things that you think about when that happens. For me, it was like my flip flops. I was like, where are my flip flops? That's like an important thing for me. Um, I obviously have one headphone in. This isn't the same set of headphones, but I always lose like an AirPod somewhere. And
Yeah.
so I had lost some stuff. But, and Mason told me, he called my parents and they were 5 hours away on a boat trip off of some state park south. And, his story of talking to like my mom and dad was kind of, it's funny because it's typical, like just how my parents are. And so he was like, Angela fell off a ladder, and she's going to Harborview. And my dad's like, well, we're 5 hours away. We can't go. And my mom was like, yes, the fuck we can. And so it's like, then they had to call all these people and somebody had to drive to the state park and pick them up to drive 3 hours to their house to then an hour and a half to me.
Wow.
And so when I start thinking about that, it's not just, and I talked about this at MTE, it's not just about us and getting the cool picture. It's also, there's so many other pieces that are involved in like, in the safety aspect of it. Like I never want to put my family through something like that again. It wasn't intentional, but when we don't think like that until it happens.
Right.
And so for me, even after I fell, I look at all the things I've done that have just been really sketchy. They're cool pictures, but is it worth it to take a cool picture, or is it worth it to just take the extra 15 minutes, put a harness on, tie yourself up, and make sure that that cool picture is actually cooler because you're safe?
Right. Exactly.
So, and I think when we're younger, we don't think about that stuff. We just think like, I can climb on here and I can do this. And I look back at like, I'm 10 years in business and I look back at year 1 through 5 and it's like, we were doing some wild climbing. I mean, used to climb on railings all the time. We're climbing up and down windows to get onto the brows instead of like really thinking what's an easier way to do it. Sometimes that's the only way. We're not set up with harnesses to do that. And now I think this past year I've been in a harness more than ever.
Right. And
So,
just so everybody understands that's listening to this who, maybe doesn't remember you from talking before or whatever, it's not like you're doing boats, right? Like you keep saying boats all the time whenever you talk to me, and I'm like, you're not doing boats. I mean, you're doing yachts, you're doing mega,
yeah,
because like you told me, you're like, I don't like doing anything under 100 feet. Like that's not a boat,
yeah,
like
yeah,
my client's like little 24-foot, center console. That's a boat,
yeah.
like
I mean,
so
my bread and butter is like 60 to 70. And
right,
then of
but
course I
still.
love the big ones.
Yeah,
And
but still 60 foot's
yeah,
not. I mean, you're still getting into vessel size, like, right?
yeah,
So for everybody who's listening to this, when you say you're climbing up the windows to the brow and everything, and this isn't the windows on like a Malibu, water
we're
wakeboard
not
boat or
blaming.
whatever. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
climbing up like 3 stories kind of thing. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, so I just want everybody to kind of understand, like, if they don't know you and they're listening to this, yeah, you're not dealing with anything small, especially, I mean, right out the gate, right out the gate, you're talking about a 20-foot ladder, like
yeah,
obviously that's a big boy boat. It's a big
yeah,
vessel, I'm not even gonna
yeah.
say boat. So yeah,
But
so
I think one thing too is like, no matter what size boat you're on, or even if you're on a car, like working on a car
yeah, yeah.
or a truck or whatever it is, and like, you're on a step stool or
Listen, don't bring
any
up
of
the
that
don't
stuff.
bring up the step stool. I still got some PTSD from that little two stepper that broke my wrist. Okay, like
But I mean, it's like we don't even think like how
you're right.
dangerous those can be
Yeah,
too.
you're right. We don't.
So
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's just, but I mean, after the fall, like I really took a lot of time to even like talk to one of my friends who he used to work with me for like 6 years, and we talked and just he was one of the last people I texted before I started work that day.
okay.
And so, and he sent me a text and he's like, "Have a great day, drink water, and be safe." And I was just like, and then 35 minutes later, I'm texting him, fell off a ladder, I'm in the hospital.
Wow.
And then he didn't hear from me for like 6 hours. But I think one it with the community is really small out here, and so with him, and because he's worked for me, we've talked about a lot of different things to be safer with what we're doing, and it even comes down to like process and procedure.
Yeah.
Like, what are we gonna do, and how are we? What? Oh, sorry, I heard a sound. I was like, what is that?
Uh,
Um, but process procedure still, you have to look at that and what can you do with that to make your day or your work safer, and
yeah.
that's really what it was, and it became very apparent to me that like I not we but I wasn't really being a responsible boss, and I can own up to that, and making sure that we were really safe 100% of the time.
Right.
Probably like 90% of the time, but you want to be like 150% safe, like, and overly safe.
Yeah.
Because one small move and we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I
And
mean, like you said, I mean, you were 4 inches from one cleat, 6 inches from
mm,
another. Like, if you'd have probably fell on either one of those, it might be a
yeah,
different story. Especially with your head. I mean, if your head would have
yeah.
hit those, it might be a different story. Let me ask you this: was there any kind of, after the fact and everything, was there any kind of and I don't know, maybe like the right word, like investigation into like whether it be OSHA or insurance or anything like that of why you weren't, maybe harnessed up or things of that nature that, is important for people to understand?
Um, I mean, I can't say it was an investigation, but in talking with the people at the yacht club, the guy was like, he didn't. He made it clear that he didn't want to lecture me because he was just happy to hear my voice because
Yeah.
people thought I died. That's it,
Yeah.
plain and simple. People thought I died or I was paralyzed, and so he just was like, in the future, maybe you can set up differently. Maybe you're not on a ladder that's leaning against a boat. Maybe, and he gave me all these options. He's like, maybe build scaffolding, maybe be on a harness, and all this stuff that I think was really like he kind of went into like the the dad side of it
Right.
with me, as opposed to like you did XYZ wrong. Like it
Right.
was more like, let's have a solution so this doesn't happen again. They never at that marina had an incident. They've had incidents, but not like that.
Okay.
And so I think for him, and I listen, like I kept the voicemails from people because it's just like hearing them. It's just a reminder of like, well, thank God I'm here, because a lot of them are like, I'm just glad to hear your
Right.
voice.
Yeah.
But he really like even now, once a month, he's like, he knows I'm going to be coming up there to work pretty soon, and it's just kind of like, let's be safe and have a good plan, and to not go through this again. And I have a plan. I'm doing all the high stuff out of the water, so in
Yeah.
a scissor lift,
Right.
but
Okay.
and I can like, and now that like I think about it too, I just think we never we did everything the same way from year one till then. And so for 10 years, you never know when it could happen. It could have happened sooner. It might not have ever happened, but why are we waiting till something happens to be safe? Like, why can't we just do the right thing right away? And if somebody doesn't like having to wear a harness, maybe this isn't the job for you. If
Right.
you're going to complain about the safety, go, go sit behind a desk.
Yeah.
You know, um, what even when I look at like when it comes to cars, RVs, whatever it is, like there's that safety side of it still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's I think the biggest thing that, and I feel like it's whether it's boats or cars or trailers or RVs or whatever. One of the biggest things that I think that a lot of detailers don't, and it's probably, the thing that nobody thinks about, right? But I mean, like, wearing a mask when you're compounding,
Mhm.
so you're not breathing in all those harsh chemicals, or even some of the ceramic coatings that are,
Oh yeah.
super, super high solids. I mean, I remember, I forget which brand it was, but I remember, coating a car one time and I was like, oh man, like I feel a little lightheaded for some reason. It's because I was holding the bottle like close to me versus like setting it, like I
Makes
was
it
holding
down.
the bottle, and so like now I pour it on my pad and I set it down somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, at least I have always worn gloves when I use ceramic coatings,
There you
but
go. I mean, you're
but I
getting
mean,
closer, right?
yeah, I'm getting close. I'm gonna, like yeah, but yeah, but I mean, like I think that's, like you said, it's just something that we all probably instinctively know, or we know because we've seen it enough
Mhm.
times on Facebook or whatever. But when you're in it, it's the last thing on your mind is to
Yeah.
wear a harness, or wear a mask, or protective eyewear, or
Mhm.
make sure that the cord isn't right underneath your ladder when you step down off of the two-stepper and
Yeah.
fall break your wrist. So
Right. When I like when I was talking about safety too at MTE, like you have to have the right insurance too when this stuff is
yeah,
going on.
yeah,
You actually do have to pay attention to OSHA laws and all of that
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
Um, and it's so crazy to me to think that like I have this picture of one of my old employees, and I'll send it to you sometime. But he's walking on the side of the boat, like it's a 2-story boat, 58 feet, and he's walking on the edge of it, cleaning the strata-glass, the outside of the
uh-huh,
strata-glass.
yeah,
I look at it and I'm just like, the picture is really cool, and he's on the water side, and so I'm like, okay, well if he fell, he would have fallen in the water.
right,
But but then I think about it now, and I'm just like, what the hell was I doing allowing him to step out there like that?
yeah,
And just and I mean, and what he does now, he's like, yeah, I'm harnessed up. He climbs to the top of smokestacks and stuff. That's his job. But I'm like, as risky as you are, like, is it, and as agile as you can be, is it really worth it? And that's what
right,
I keep asking people: is it really worth it to do all that stuff and just wait for the accident to happen? And but how about we just prevent the accident from happening altogether?
yeah,
Because when I look at the spot that I was in when I went back, I literally had 5 feet to buff, 5 feet, like nothing crazy, and it turned into I never got to finish it, didn't get to finish the job, and not because the owner was not mad at all. Like he was actually wanted me to be safe, and I do 3 of his boats already,
right,
but I that job was at the time was one of the biggest tickets that I had, and I
okay,
was just like, and I had never. I do 5-figure jobs, but this was a high 5-figure job, and I had never priced something that high. And then for the guy, like, and who it is, I was just like, dang, this is crazy because it put me into a different level of clientele.
right,
So to not be able to finish that job, and seeing what I had already done, and I was just so excited because I knew this boat it was just going to be glass. It was going to be amazing. And I felt so bad, but the owner, and this is the other thing to think about too, because it's not always just safety, but are you working for the right people?
yeah,
Is that the owner texted the captain and was like, I don't care if she comes back in a week, in a month, in a year, 5 years, 10 years. He's like, her health is more important than
yeah.
any boat. And I had never heard that. And I've been in business 10 years and I never heard that before.
Yeah, no,
And
that's
so,
awesome because most people would be like, "Oh, well, okay, let me go find somebody else to finish up the
mhm,
job then," or whatever.
yep.
So, yeah, that's awesome. So, have you finished? Or well, you said you haven't finished the job. So,
No,
are
no.
you?
So he sold that boat
Oh,
and
okay.
bought the 100-footer that I'm going to be doing in May.
Okay.
So
So
he went bigger.
nice.
Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, that one we have a totally different plan. I'm doing all the high stuff I'll do out of the water,
Right.
in a lift, and then everything else we'll be able to do when it goes back to his house at Hunts Point. Um, but I think it was really, that was an eye opener for me too, on a different side of it, which is, do I have the right clientele? Do they
Right.
really appreciate what I'm doing? Because I think even sometimes all of us have people who are just like, I just need the job done. When is it going to get done?
Right. Right. Exactly.
Well, I don't know. We're talking about me being paralyzed and never working again. So
Yeah.
let's figure
Exactly.
that out first.
Yeah. Yeah. Your
So
boat. Your boat's the last thing I'm worried about now, kind of thing.
yeah,
So how long was your recovery? Because this happened what back in
June.
June? Okay.
Yeah.
And
So I actually just learned this because I just saw my arm specialist. So my initial recovery, they say 6 to 9 months for your initial recovery of like things kind of just like getting back into place and being able to function.
right.
But it's after that 9 months, then it's 18 to 24 months of my body really getting back. I'm going to go through a lot of residual stuff. I still have my concussion, so that's going to be a couple years, if not, it could be who knows
Yeah.
how long that's going to be. So there's a lot of just kind of things that are trickling, and every day things go away. The recovery itself was not a linear recovery. Like when you break, I think I told this to you, like when you break
Yeah.
your arm, you kind of know where you're going to be in 6 months. Um, with a fall, and they explain this, it's not, that's totally different. Because your body is being held together by the inflammation
Right.
of your soft tissue, right? And as soon as that starts healing in one place, things just start moving, and the pain is ridiculous. And sometimes there's a lot of pain, sometimes there's no pain. Um, I've and I live in chronic pain, but I reached a level of pain where then they also talk about the mental side of it and the mental healing. And I 10 out of 10 do not recommend ever falling off a ladder and having to go through it, and be like take all precautions to not do it,
Yeah.
because the recovery itself, I think, is harder than, or yeah, it's definitely is harder than the actual accident. So because you're going through everything, you feel things that you never thought you were going to feel. You're thinking things that if you're a level-headed person, the way that you think is not going to be the same.
Right.
um and then there's the PTSD on top of that, and it's just like, so it's a trickling effect. It's lingering. um I talk about it openly because I think people do need to be aware that it's like, if my mental health was not in check, like I've gotten it to a point where I'm in check, but if this had happened 2 years ago, again, I could say we would not have this conversation,
Wow.
because of the level of pain in which that I reached physically. I could not deal with it. And if that's the kind of, and I really did say to my mom, I was like, if this pain is something I have to deal with for the next 6 to 9 months, I will kill myself.
Wow.
Like, and that is just because it's impossible. It's like there's nothing that takes it away, and I can't be on narcotics. And if you go on narcotics after a fall or any injury, there's that chance of, like, getting addicted and all that
Yeah,
stuff. So
exactly. Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that plays into it, and
So
so
how did you keep your mental health in check? I mean, did you talk to somebody, or did you have
oh
somebody
yeah.
that, a therapist or something that helped you with all of that, or what did you
Yeah,
do?
so I have had a therapist. Let's see, 15, the same therapist for like 15 years. And I
Okay.
know a lot of people are like, "Oh, you should change," and I'm like, well, I hate change, and she's
Yeah.
been really good, and and so I mean, we're working on that too. Um,
Yeah.
but I talked to her like the first, I want to say, 3 months. We talked like every other day,
Okay.
and then of course, like, I talked to my mom, and just I didn't really talk to my friends. I kind of isolated myself. So it didn't surprise me when people were like, "I didn't know," and I'm like, "Yeah, well, I did isolate myself." Um, because it kind of puts you in a vulnerable spot of like, well, some of the
Right.
stuff, conversations that were happening. But my parents were definitely go-to people. I had my animals, and so that kind of also just helped me be distracted a little bit. Not that I could get up and do anything. I mean, I was stuck on my couch for like three, almost 3 months, like two and a
Wow.
half months. Um, but yeah, my therapist, that was like a huge one. My therapist and my mom and my brother, my nieces.
Yeah.
So
So you
they're,
had you had a good support
yeah,
team kind of with you to make sure you always had that comfort.
yeah. And I had, and my employee, like, he kept my business going, but I think this was also something that we are forever going to be connected. Like, we were
Yeah.
connected before, but we are forever going to be connected after this, because,
Right.
he was just there. And the one thing that a lot of people don't think about is the person that's there who sees it. And I made sure, like, a couple days later, to just make sure he was okay, because he's just seen, like, right in his face, he's just seen something really
Yeah. Yeah. Was
traumatic for him too.
was was he okay with it? I mean, or did he, have any issues or anything?
He had some issues. He thought I died, like, he thought I was gonna die.
Right.
And we talked through it. Like, we talked, actually just talked to him the other day, but we talked through a lot of it at the beginning, just making sure that he was okay. And I asked him, I was like, "Do you want to work or do you not want to work?" And he's like, "No, I still want to." He's like, "I want to work and I want to just do this." He was one of my very first employees that I ever had. Um, And so he was able to talk to his friends, and I think just kind of work through it, and just, but it was the he said the hardest part was like from when I went into the hospital, because he was with me, and then
Yeah.
he went back and cleaned everything up and all that stuff, and then he didn't really hear from me for 2 days. So it wasn't until he heard my voice that then he knew, like, okay, like she's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Kind of felt
So
better. Eased
yeah,
eased up on him a little bit. Yeah. No.
yeah. So
So
so there's a lot of pieces.
yeah. So have you gotten back to work yet, or are you still kind of
Yeah,
working your way into it? So okay. So
yes.
how long were you out before you were able to, get back in and get back into working?
Well, so originally I thought I could just go back to work because I felt good one day, and so I went to work
Right.
like like I think 6 days later, and then I couldn't walk after that, and I was like, oh God,
Oh
okay,
wow.
so that's not happening. So when I realized that, then I didn't go back to work for about I think 2.5 months.
Okay.
And I was lucky enough to then, when I went back to work, I got to work with this really amazing guy in Gig Harbor, and he just said to me, he's like, I was doing a coating on his boat. He has a 68-foot Princess yacht, and he just said, "Do what you can." He's like, "Don't push yourself." He's like, "If you can only do an hour, do an hour. If you can do a full day, cool." But he's like, "Just just ease back into it."
Right.
And I'm so thankful for that, because there were days where I could work 6 hours, and there were days where and mind you, 6 hours is short for me,
Yeah.
but that's all I can do now, really. And then there were some days where I only worked an hour, and there was a day where I came down and something was out of place, and my mental state was not right, and I was like, I gotta go home,
Yeah.
and that's really just how it is sometimes. But
Right.
I think with him allowing me to just kind of figure out where my body was able to do stuff and where it can't, and him and his wife just being so supportive, that really helped me be able to feel good about myself to get back in and work, because you know some of my muscles atrophied and I wasn't where I was before. We're talking about me working like 12 to 14 hours because I like it. Now the most I can work is 6 hours, or at
Yeah.
that time.
Right.
And so yesterday I actually worked a really long day. I did which is I was so happy that I did this, but I did my 8 hours, and then went home, hung out with my dogs, and I went back to work because I love working at night. And
Okay.
so I went back to work, and I was like, it felt so good to just be able to do that and just almost be back to where I normally am. But I'm not going to do that all the time. It's
Right.
just,
Yeah.
it was just so probably like once in a blue moon, I'll go back to work later. So,
Yeah. How hard is it to work on boats at night then? I mean,
well, they're in a boathouse. So
oh, okay. All
yeah.
right.
So he's got really good lighting, and I have a whole light system now that I built. I designed it when I was like on my back. I was like, I'm going to design this and I'm going to do
Yeah.
this, and what can
That's
make my
cool.
life easier. So,
Right, right. No,
yeah.
that's cool. With the concussion, I mean, like, how does that affect you as far as like, you know, I know a lot of times, having a concussion that lingers on, either bright lights or quick movements or,
Mhm.
heights even. So like how does that affect you with, being up on, ladders or having to move your head side to side, looking at things or especially with the light system, being real bright.
Well, what it actually affects, what my concussion affects me more in my memory. So I
Okay.
have like short-term memory loss. Oh, and I want to be like, is it because I fell and hit my head, or is it because I turned 40? I don't, but I've had such a good memory, but I really think it's because I hit my head. But I
Yeah.
also, sometimes my balance is off. Like it's
Right.
really weird. Like I've always been, when you're on a boat, it's one hand for you, one hand for the boat.
Yeah.
Um, and I think like in the summertime we work barefooted on the boats. That's just how we are. But sometimes I'll be on there and just like the slightest movement, it's like I'm like, oh my God, I'm falling. And
Yeah.
I'm not falling. I'm just like,
Yeah.
but I
It's
feel
almost
like I'm going
almost
to.
like a severe vertigo kind of.
Yeah, just, and it's really quick, and then I'm reminded of like, no, you're not, you're fine. You're literally standing here.
Yeah.
Um at MTE, I noticed that I get overstimulated
Okay.
like very quickly. So walking into the convention, my my head was just like, I could hear every conversation very vividly
Oh
because
wow.
because my memory is like shot. I'm concentrating a lot to remember things, but now
Right.
I'm hearing everything.
Okay.
And where normally I could tone things out, I can't I can't really do that anymore.
Oh,
So it's really weird. It's just I don't know. And then when I get too tired, then my speech is messed up. And so a lot of times I would dip out before and I could get to that point with anybody.
yeah.
Because there's just like this, I don't know, I can't get the words out that I'm thinking that I want to say, and then I stutter a lot, and it happens when I'm on the phone too with people. Like I'll start talking, and I'm just like, I can't say what I'm trying to say, and then I'm just apologizing for not saying
Yeah.
what's in my head because I just can't get the words out.
Right.
So,
Right. It's like they won't go from your brain to your tongue
yeah,
kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, so bringing up NTE, and I know you did a ladder safety
mhm,
education. So how was that? Um, how did first of all, like I guess like let's go through like wanting to do it. I mean, obviously I know MTE for everybody who's listening whoever wants to do almost anybody can kind of do an education.
mhm,
You just have to submit. MTE obviously has to, whatever the committee is, they weed it down to like the ones that I guess are like, really good. Like ladder
yeah,
safety is probably a really good one. How to start a detailing podcast, they probably be like, Alex, nah,
yeah.
you don't need to do that, kind of thing. So like tell me like, you know, from having that idea, like what did you submit, how and then how did you, plan it out and then how was the turnout?
So I knew I wanted to talk again. They had asked me last year to speak again about marine detailing or
Okay.
this side of it, what I do. And I told them I would. Like I was like, I'll do it. And then after my fall, I was just kind of it really was just me thinking like, hey, you know what, this is some people do need a reality check of like accidents happen and
Right.
this is like I'm very much um I don't know, people there were like, you're such a miracle. It's a miracle that you're walking, and they're absolutely correct. I don't necessarily think I'd use miracle, but it is true. Like I'm very lucky for the outcome of everything. But with thinking about that, I was like, I just want to go and just not to be all sappy about it, is just like speak my truth on what actually happened and
Yeah.
how we can prevent that from happening. Like where did I go wrong? Because a lot of people also won't talk about where they went wrong. And they're just like we look at them and we're just like, oh, they're perfect, they run a perfect shop, nothing probably ever happens there, when the reality is like they're doing sketchy shit, and
Yeah.
we do sketchy stuff on boats all the time. But I really want to be super authentic about that, where I've made mistakes, and to help people not make those same mistakes that I made. And so that's where, for me, I felt like I can allow myself to tap into something and be super authentic and vulnerable about this thing that still is fresh, and let people see that. And being 10 years in business, I'm not new in business, I'm 10
Right.
years in.
Yeah.
Um, and shit happens, and shit did happen. And I just wanted, like, I saw the people that in that, like, I just see people and they just, sometimes it seems like they're better. I hate saying this, but it's almost like they just come off as like nothing will ever happen to me, nothing can touch me,
Right.
and
We're all
and
invincible
the
until we're
reality is,
not. Yeah.
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 So
I mean,
that was a lot of it too. It's just like I want to be able to make sure this doesn't happen to somebody. There's going to be somebody out there listening that is going to take something from this and be like, oh, well, maybe I can just set myself up for success instead of potentially setting myself up for failure.
right.
So, so that was a lot of it. And maybe people will take nothing from it and they're just like, oh, she fell off a ladder, who cares? But what's going to happen if you do have an employee and you aren't set up correctly and that employee falls and that employee dies? And how are you, like, what could
Yeah.
you have done? How about we just prevent that?
Right. And I think
So,
the one thing, and I mean, it's a little different in your case somewhat because it was you and not your employee.
mhm,
But I think, we a lot of detailers or business owners, probably don't carry proper insurance or the
right.
right insurance. So, I mean, the fact that it was and like not that it was not because it was you, But like if it's your employee and you don't have the correct insurance, like now that 10 years in business is just done because that
Yeah.
employee is going to sue you for everything you want. So you have to make
Mhm.
sure that you're properly insured. Um, and again, like I said, I just, you see the posts all the time of, people asking, "Ooh, why do I need insurance? Why do I need insurance? Whatever,
Well, here's
I don't,
why.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, so how was the turnout for it? I mean, did you have a good turnout?
Yeah, so there's definitely more people at this talk than there were at the last one.
Okay.
And then what I found out from just walking around and talking to people is like there was a positive there's a lot of positive feedback, which is we need to talk more safety when it comes to MTE and being
Yeah.
able to have education day.
Right.
And people are like, that's gonna be your job now. And I was like, I don't, you know what? I don't wanna, unfortunately, I am probably going to be the one that does talk safety, and I am going to relive this every time that I talk about it, which
Yeah.
is fine because it also is like healing, right?
Right.
But safety is just, I don't know, like I think I push it so much now just because of this whole thing. And like you said, people don't have the right insurance. People like, do your employees have their own personal insurance? That's
Yeah.
something to look at too. Like,
That's
is your business running the right insurance?
yeah, that's one thing I'm kind of surprised, like now kind of thinking about it is like I'm surprised more companies aren't offering, more safety equipment, you know,
Mhm.
whether or even like, I'm surprised MTE doesn't have somebody there, who offers safety equipment, whether it's, PPE gear, eyewear, masks,
Right.
you know, safe ladders, if there's
Mhm.
a safe ladder, kind of thing, or
Yeah.
or harnesses or,
Just
whatever.
something. Yeah.
Um, I might have to pitch that to Sheldon. Maybe he should look into a company to come and uh exhibit at MTE just to push the safety
Well,
aspect.
I mean, the guy that lives across the street, like my neighbor that saves my house whenever something goes wrong when I'm gone,
Uh,
that's what he sells. Like he works for
yeah,
a company and that's what they do. And he's like, if you ever want like a really cool harness, he's like, let me know. And I'm like, what? Like,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And it's
Where were you back in May of last year? Yeah,
gosh, yeah, but yeah, I feel like they really should. I mean, you're pushing all this other stuff. You're pushing
yeah,
some like we're pushing like mediocre films, mediocre codings. Let's put some effort into like some real stuff, some safety stuff. How about
yeah,
like
yeah.
why do we push so many other things when we could push something
Because I
that
mean,
really
like
just push ahead?
even yeah, because I mean, even some of these companies, they kind of, like a lot of the coding companies are like, wear gloves, but like, when I'm ordering chemicals and man, I mean, maybe I need to have a talk with Jason now that I'm thinking about this because Aquatech, we kind of fall into this or whatever. But I mean, like, how cool would it be if you were ordering gloves from or if you were able to order gloves while you're ordering your ceramic coatings? You're like,
Yeah,
I'm ordering ceramic coatings, and your ceramic coating company that you order from has nitrate gloves on their site. You're
mhm.
like, oh yeah, I need some gloves, and
Gloves, yeah,
yeah, because most of the time we're all ordering them off of Amazon, but sometimes you don't think about it or whatever. Or if the compound and polish company has eyewear
mhm.
and masks. Well, whether you order them or not, it's a different story. But if they had them
Yeah.
available, like,
Make it more
um,
accessible, like when
yeah,
you're
right,
physically
right,
ordering stuff.
right.
Yeah,
Because that's the thing, right? You're like, oh, I need compound and polish, but you don't ever go like, but do I need gloves? Do I need
yeah,
eyewear? Do I need a mask? To like go on Amazon or something like that. So, because they all do kind of teach it. I mean, you hear all the big names across the industry always talking about, I mean, I always
mhm.
remember Marcus Parsley when he was at IGL, constantly was talking about wearing gloves because he's like, if it's on you, it's in you,
Yeah.
uh, and it's funny to see, people on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok applying ceramic coatings and they're doing it barehanded, and it's like,
Yeah,
what are you
I did that.
doing?
I did that one time, and I don't do it like that anymore. One time,
Yeah,
and I was like, "This sucks. My
yeah,
hands are hydrophobic, and
yeah, yeah,
I'm gonna die doing this before I die
right.
from COVID." I'll tell you that right now.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, maybe the detail industry needs to be, do better with safety.
Yeah.
And I could say that because we're having this conversation and it's making
Mm,
me think about it. But I think for the most part, again, until it happens to you, you just don't think about it, you
yeah.
know? I mean, I definitely know since I had my fall off the ladder and broke my wrist, like I realized, like, I'm 51, I'm about to be 52 in a few weeks. Like
Mm,
I realized, like, okay, I just can't like hop up in the back of the pickup truck anymore. Like,
yeah.
let's get the step out, let's step on the step, let's step on the tire, let's
Hmm.
step over into the bed. Like I feel like such an old man doing it that way, but I realize like my body doesn't like, do that anymore. Like I can't just
Yeah.
hop into the back of a pickup truck. I just can't jump out of the back of a pickup truck anymore. Like I have like even now, like, my mentality is like, okay, we're just gonna jump into the back of this SUV and clean these back windows. And I'm like,
Like,
struggling, like, like let me go, like,
I'll get it after lunch.
yeah, exactly. It's like I'm gonna try to
Yeah.
like hop up in there and roll around and pull myself up. And so yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it too is our mental state. Like we can still
Hmm.
do things that we could do when we were younger, or we just our mental state is like, nah, we got this, bro, like let's just do it, and then
Yeah.
you miss, and then you're down and out. So
Yeah.
um
And I think the one thing that we didn't talk about is some of the reality of getting injured on the job
yeah.
and the conversations that come with like a catastrophic injury. Um, which is like, my spinal surgeon, my orthopedic surgeon, my arm specialist, the neurosurgeon, they were all like, you may never work again. Or the
Wow.
one is like, the big one is like, you may never walk again.
Yeah.
The working, I was like, but the you may never walk again. Well, then why am I like, what am I doing if I can't do that?
Right.
You know? And so and that was a big thing for me when it with talking as well, is like, um, learn from like my mistake and never have to have those conversations. At least not when it comes to your job.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So, but to answer your question about the outcome from MTE, I got a lot of positive feedback. There's probably twice as many people in on the education day than there was last year.
Nice.
Um, and I think it's going to continuously grow, like as I allow myself to really like just be open about it and just have these conversations and talk more at MTE or any place that wants to have safety as a conversation. So I'm open to having safety as a conversation,
Yeah.
and
No, I
just
mean,
being
I
really
mean,
honest about it.
yeah, I mean, when you reached out to me and was like, "Hey, I'd love to come on and do this," like, again, I think I fell in that I didn't know it had happened to you,
Mhm.
because I didn't see it. I don't know if you really posted it or anything like that, and um, so like it caught me off guard when you said that. I was like, "Holy shit!" Like,
Yeah,
um,
I I did post when I got out of the hospital, because I had like over 75 texts, like 80 texts
wow,
or something. I was
yeah,
like, I'm not texting these people back. Like I will make a post, and that's how people can know. And then the nice thing too is like we have a community that's a boating community that's tight,
yeah,
and they really rallied around like me and my family as well. And so that was kind of nice for us to have like that extra support. But I really didn't step outside. I really didn't, well, because I really couldn't.
yeah,
But but that's besides the point. But I didn't like I didn't reach out to people and really talk to them. I mean, there was a handful of people, and so I did have people at MT, and they're like, "Oh, I feel bad. I didn't contact you." And I'm like, "Well, you can't feel bad about something that I didn't tell you about."
yeah, yeah,
Like,
exactly, yeah,
it's like you can feel bad a little bit because that's on you, but really, like, don't feel bad about me, because if I didn't, like, if I had texted you and was like, "Hey, Alex, I fell," like, I'm
yeah,
just
and then
letting
I
you know.
never replied to you. Then
Yeah.
then I'm the asshole. But the fact that you didn't, like it, what, yeah.
Mhm.
But no, it was just crazy. Like
Yeah.
I was, when you reached out to me, I was like, oh hell yeah, let's do this because that's the one thing that I always like to try and do every so often on the
Mhm.
podcast is do something about safety or health or whatever, because I don't think it's talked about enough. Um, and sometimes it's tough because sometimes I think, we're afraid to hear these stories or whatever because we
Mhm.
think it can't happen to us. So like why do we want to listen to it, or why do we want to hear it? So that's why I'm glad that you had such a great turnout at MTE, that people wanted to hear your story, or
Mhm.
just find out, hey, like this can happen to me, so what do I need to do to change my routine and
Mhm.
have a better um setup for an employee kind of thing. So
Yeah. Well, and I think there was a lot of like I think bosses in there, like managers and bosses,
okay,
and
good.
there was a group that they had like younger, their crew was there and younger guys, and I could tell those younger guys didn't really care. Like, and that's fine. Like, you don't have to. You don't have
Right.
to care one bit. But I could also tell that maybe the business owners sometimes forget that they have to care about their employees and their employees' safety and what their employees are doing. Like, are they cutting corners? Do you have the right process and procedures to make sure nothing happens? And are they following it? And are
Yeah.
you like enforcing it? Um, I know that any of my guys, I could bring them onto a project right now and they would know exactly what I want, exactly how to do it, because we've done the same process and procedures for they did eight and a
Right.
half years with me,
Yeah.
and so but there are quite a few places that they're just like, oh, you know how to buff, this is how you're going to do it, oh, we're changing it every day,
Yeah.
but it's we're not reinventing the wheel here, like, but you have to pay attention to your employees and you have to make sure they're set up for success and the safety side of it, because if they go away, who are you going to bring in?
Yeah.
And if they go, if enough of them go away because you haven't taken care of them because they might have gotten hurt, and God forbid they do, but if they have and you aren't taking care of them, what are they saying because you didn't take care of them?
Yeah.
And so that's like, if this had been Mason, like, I already would know where we went wrong, and I would be very prepared to take care of anything that he needed. But I know so many people who just don't care, when
Yeah.
it comes to
Exactly.
employees. Like, you
Yeah.
work for me. No, my employees work with me. Like,
Right.
we work together. But I can tell when there's people that are, you work for me. It's my business. You do what I say. Well, yeah, you're doing what I
Yeah.
say because I have the expertise to guide you so that we can work
Right.
as a unit.
So when you work with your employees now,
Mhm.
I mean, do you guys kind of, before you start the project, I mean, are you mapping out your kind of safety protocols? Like, okay, if we're doing this, we're going to make sure we're on the scissor lift. We're going to make sure that we're harnessed in. If we're, you know, top side of the boat, like, make
Mhm.
sure, you're harnessed in or tied off, or, however, I mean, do you kind of get a little bit of a plan going for that before just attacking it?
Yeah, so now, so when I don't really have employees now, but when I bring people in, um, for instance, when Mason was with me, we're on the Princess yacht, and his arch on the boat um, was probably up like 18 feet or something
Mhm.
from the water, and so I wasn't going up there, but
Right.
Mason and I talked about it for about a week and a half before I put him up there, and I was like, we'll have a harness. I was like, we're gonna every time we look at this boat, we're gonna figure out how are we gonna tie this off to make it so it's safe for you, and he very much was a part of that planning so that he was going to be safe since he was the one climbing.
Right.
Um, a few years back, we did a 92 footer when I had my full crew, and we definitely took about, I want to say, 3 days to plan how we were going to set up all of these harnesses to get the outside of the boat. But it's never just me saying, like, this is how I want to do it. If I'm not in the harness and the person that's in the harness doesn't like what we're doing, they are definitely a part of that plan of like how what's going to make you feel most safe while we're doing this,
Right.
and what do I have to do to ensure your safety. Like, do you want me standing here? Do you want me not standing here? Do you want me talking to you because you need a distraction? Do you want me to hold your compound? Do you want me to be able to grab your buffer? What do you want me to do?
Right.
Because all of that plays into the success of the job that we're doing. I would never just let somebody just climb on up on like, well, on a ladder. There's got to be two people, but we're never going to use ladders again. That's
Right.
just out.
Yeah.
But and in a on a scissor lift, like, you're fairly safe on there. Like, I mean, I was on a scissor lift today,
Right.
but when we're on harnesses, I mean, that is very much a team effort of like, let's make sure everybody's safe, whether it's two people together or, three people are watching the lines and one person's out there polishing. I don't care how long it takes you to do it, as long as you have what you need to be successful.
Yeah. 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 And safe
So,
and be safe. I mean, that's the main
mhm.
thing is doesn't matter how long it takes. Let's just be safe with it.
Yeah, and especially now because I'm doing film, like, well, I've been doing film for a while, but like, you have to be like, when we do a hard top, you have to be in a harness,
Yeah.
like, no matter what, because the second that film goes down, like, it's not like I'm on solid ground. Like, I don't have the luxury of being on solid ground like on a
Right.
car. Like, I have to lay on this film sometimes, and that film, the second there's moisture in the air, you just start sliding.
Yeah.
Well, I've literally been at the edge of my line on a harness laying there, like, it's fully holding me, and I'm like leaning out the edge just so I can, like, do my shit from the
Yeah.
corner. Cause but I mean, I'm putting all my weight onto that harness and being held in. But I remember one time I laid the film and I had to lay down to do a little section. I was like, oh God, I'm sliding. I wasn't gonna slide far, but
Right.
I slid about like an inch and I could feel it.
Yeah.
Very slowly I slid. And I was like, yep, we're going to put a harness on and I'm going to tie off
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Because
because,
sliding in sometimes sliding an inch doesn't feel like much. Like if you're on a slip and slide with not enough
mhm,
soap. But if you're on a high thing and you slide just an inch, it feels like you're falling
yeah.
off the Empire State Building,
Hmm.
So yeah, I get that.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I would rather my guys, like, if you came and worked with me and I'm like, you're going to do the outside of this boat. Like, I would rather you tell me what is going to be safe for you. Like, how do you
Yeah.
want to do this?
Me standing on this dock watching you do the outside of the boat is what I'm
Mhm.
gonna tell you because
Yeah.
I don't do
That's,
boats. No.
yeah.
No.
And that's most people. They're like, I hate boats. Okay.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
hate them all day long, but I also don't like cars. So it's
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
trade-off,
It's
right?
that's like the interesting thing. Like the more that I meet people in this industry is there's the people that love to do interiors and don't like doing exteriors. There's people who love exteriors,
Mhm.
don't love and don't want to do interiors. And there's people that are just boat people all day long.
Yeah.
I know I've met some people that are like just airline or plane people. That's all they
Yeah.
do is planes all day long. That's all they want to work on. And so it's just neat how everybody just somehow finds their niche because I mean, I started working at a car wash. That's where I learned detailing, and I mean, yeah, we would do boats at the car wash and things like that. But I mean, it's not, very often or whatever. And so it's, I never really looked at it as like, oh, there's people that are detailing boats like as a job, not just doing them here and there. Oh, there's people that like just do airplanes only because that's a job or whatever. So the more I like dive into this industry and everything, you learn that there's people, I mean, shoot metal polishers, the people that just all they
Yeah.
do is
Just
metal
metal.
polishing all day
Yeah.
long or aluminum or whatever. It's like, God, like I don't even want to do cars or boats or planes or whatever. I just want to
Mhm.
polish metal all day long. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean
Which you
it
shoot
is
me in the face if I ever say that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to do that either.
It's when I say that, like, I do boats and stuff, like, I mean, there's always that one person that's just trying to, I'm a female in a male driven
Yeah.
industry, right?
Yeah.
Not a big deal. I really don't care. But some people do care. And this was the first time at MTE where like, and I know you'll get this when I say where it's like there's like a bigger dick conversation happening, and I was like, I don't care what like I don't care about that. Like, if
Yeah.
you're good at what you do, by all means, be good at it. But don't
Yeah.
you're no better than anybody here. We're all on the same level of what we're doing.
Well, and I think it's all subjective too.
Yeah.
This whole like I'm the best or I'm better than like. I
Look,
mean,
I'm the
are you?
best at falling off a ladder. That is what
Yeah.
one thing I'll say.
Yeah.
I've won that award.
Well, I mean, let's. I mean, we'll put it out there. Has anybody fallen off a higher ladder? I've done a 2-step. I've fallen off a 2-step. You fell off a 20-foot. So you've got me beat off of the 20-footer versus the 2-step. Is anybody fallen
Maybe
off
push.
of higher than 20 feet that can take it from
And
you?
we're not talking. We're talking hitting solid ground.
Yeah, yeah,
You have to hit solid ground, not falling in the water,
yeah.
not falling onto an airbag.
So let me ask you this: when you fell, were you did you have any tools with you? I mean, like, were you holding a
Yeah,
polisher or your compound?
yeah. I was holding my polisher,
So
so
when you fell, did you let go of the polisher or
I
did it?
think I threw it, like because it. From
That's
what
right.
Mason said, it like landed on the dock. It wasn't on because I was still climbing up,
Yeah.
but it landed on the dock. But I think I threw it. Um, it's funny. Everything like landed fine. Like my flip flops landed fine. My sunglasses landed fine. My AirPods were on the edge of the dock, landed
Everything
fine.
but you landed
Everything
fine.
but me.
Yeah.
But then the funny part about it is like I guess something happened in my um sunglasses went in the water, and then it was like, and then the next day I put my AirPods through the wash, and it's like, and it's like, then when we got to work, like the polisher like fell in the water. So it's like just these things.
Yeah.
I was like, really, like this?
Yeah.
Okay, but
Well, the reason why I asked was because and I didn't fall. I guess I should say I didn't fall
you
off the 2-step,
stumbled.
right? No, I stepped down, and when I stepped
Mm,
down, I stepped onto the extension cord where it plugs in, and it had a round into it.
okay,
So when I
yeah,
stepped on it, it rolled, right? So then I did one of these numbers.
yeah.
But I think where I went wrong was instead of throwing my Rupes machine, I cradled it like it was a baby and I tried to brace myself with my hand, and
Uh,
that's what caused for me to break my wrist. So, lesson learned. Throw the $400 Rupes machine to the ground
mhm,
and not get a broken wrist, maybe. Although I still don't know if I would have dropped the Rupes machine, would I still not broken my wrist or whatever? Because how else would I have kind of saved myself in the fall? So,
yeah.
um, no, I was just curious if you held on to it like it was a baby, like I
Oh
did,
no.
or if you just threw that bitch out. Like,
No, I probably threw it. I mean, the only distinct thought that I had while falling, I think I told you this, was there was a dead fish. Mason and I were talking, and we noticed there was a dead fish between the dock and the boat. And
uh,
while I was falling, I do remember thinking to myself, just don't hit that fish. Don't hit the fish, right? Because your brain works in a very
yeah,
interesting way,
yeah,
and so it's like, but for that to be my thought of like, while I'm falling is just it's just
yeah.
funny. It's just wild to me. Like I really didn't want to hit the fish. I was really concerned about my flip flops, and
Yeah, not, "Hey, don't hit those big metal cleats that
mm-mm,
might take me out
no,
completely. Just don't
that's
hit that dead
minor
fish."
situation there.
Yeah.
It's like the my thoughts of like yeah, there was three people that I was like really concerned about. It was like my friend Kelsey for one, and then I was like, I remember thinking like, where is she? And I remember thinking, Grant Menard, and
Uh-huh.
oh, I was like, I gotta call Grant, and then my parents, and so and I remember telling Grant, I was like, yeah, you were one of like my first thoughts, like when I fell, and he was just like, of course, like he was like happy about it. But he's my friend, and I have so much
Yeah,
respect for him, and but he has definitely helped me through so much in my life, and it's he was updated along the way with everything that was going on,
right.
and he did see me. I did go to AFO, and because that was 10 days after I fell.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's when I found out, like, oh, I can't walk. Like, that's when I found that out, was when I was up there. I was like, this isn't happening. So the first couple of days you think like you can do stuff, and then really
Yeah.
you can't do anything.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but it, like when it comes down to the safety part of it, let's just not put ourselves in those situations. Let's be smarter.
Yeah, that's the right thing. Um, yeah, so kind of taking this role as, like you said, like, I'll probably be the safety person to talk about this,
Mhm.
whatever. Like, what other ways are you trying to kind of get that message out there other than like MTE or, reaching out to me about coming on the podcast? I mean, are you doing any, other things? Are you posting about it or talking about it or anything or
Um, I am not posting about it quite yet. I have thought about putting some stuff on my social media, and I just need to talk to my social media people about that. Um, I think part of why I haven't really put it on my social media is because I have a lot of PTSD from it, and so
right,
when I do talk about it, I've prepared myself to talk about it. Um, so like for this, I was like, I know we're talking about this week, and so I was able to prepare myself to not have some sort of freak out moment all week.
right,
Um, but I think that some of it too is just being really realistic with allowing myself to let people like know this side of it, but to push safety, it's like the people have to know why, and the why is the accident.
yeah,
That for me, there has to be the why has to be answered, and the why is the accident, and it's whether like how am I going to get through that, and still I'm obviously okay with it. Like I'm not okay with it. I'm okay with talking about it,
right,
to a certain extent, but I want to talk more like not just on podcasts or not just at MTE, because I don't think it should be like just a once in a while thing. I think that it should be pretty regular that we are having conversations, even if it's like, we're having like somebody's just like, oh, I'm just gonna have you on and talk for 10 minutes
yeah,
about why safety is so important, and then that's that on whatever it is. I'm still trying to navigate like who I can talk to and who has the biggest platform to be able to listen and understand that we have to push safety. Like I
right,
apologized in my speech in my speech when I was talking at MTE. I apologized to those people, and now that I think about it, I was like, I have nothing to apologize for. But what I said was like, I'm sorry that I'm pushing safety so much with you guys,
yeah.
and nobody
But
should
you
be
shouldn't be.
apologizing for
Yeah, you
that.
should be.
But
Exactly.
in my head, I was apologizing because people wanted to hear the money side. They
Yeah.
didn't want to hear the safety side. But the reality is
Well, because it's
we
not
aren't
the
going to have the
flashy
money.
stuff. Flashy. Yeah.
Yeah, if we
Yeah.
we're not gonna have money if we don't have safety. And
Exactly.
so I whatever I can do, if people want to call me or just like
Yeah.
get it out more, I'm willing to do it to a certain extent. I also have to
Have
be
you
mindful of like my
have
mental
you
at the same
tried to
time.
talk to the IDA at all about maybe trying to like do something through the IDA? I mean, like
I think well, I
whether a
looked at
webinar
their
or
schedule.
something.
I want to do a webinar on it because I did a webinar last year.
Mhm.
It's actually I did my webinar, and then that following Tuesday is when I fell. So
Oh wow.
yeah, so I think that I haven't reached out to them yet. They know that I'm very interested in talking, so I probably will um, reach out to them when I'm maybe next week. I'm pretty
Yeah.
busy this year though, so
Gotcha.
um, but I do wanna get it out there more and just you know if that's what people know me for instead of votes, then fine, so be it. That's totally okay.
Yeah. No, but that's
So
that's probably a good thing for people to know you for, that the person that's making everybody safer
mhm,
or at least giving them kind of the right, you know, idea no, excuse me, ideas for safety. Um, I
mhm,
mean, I would also say like, um, the round table too. I mean, reaching out to them and talking to them. I
mhm,
don't know what kind of interaction you have um, with those guys and everything, but I know that they do a lot of um, I don't know if they do any webinars, but I know they do a lot of, just posts and talks and the trainings and things like that, that would probably be
Mhm.
a good thing too.
Yeah. I I think as this year progresses and as they go in, probably start looking more. I do
Yeah,
feel like it's important for me. For me, I know it's like most of the time people see me as like joking and having a good time, which I am. But this is like, I know this is a serious conversation that people need to really have like sunk into their head. When they're gonna get a business going, or if they already have a business, you really, you know, yes, it can always be fun. You can have a good time and laugh because I definitely push that with my business. But we got to be real about safety.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I can't say it any other way. You just have to be real about it.
yeah,
So,
for sure. I mean, it's
and I don't mind being that person that, that does that.
yeah, yeah. I think I think not a good thing that it happened to you, but maybe on the reverse side, because now you're thinking that way, and now you've got this
Mhm.
experience to kind of explain to people or teach people, like, hey, this is where I fucked up, so let me give you the tools so you don't go
Mhm.
through the same thing again.
Yeah. Well, and I think like the only thing I can do for people is just be honest about what I went
Yeah,
through and what happened. And I don't need to go into the details of like, the recovery part. They don't really need to know that kind of stuff. That's really personal and really, when I look at it, some of it's just overwhelming
right,
um to talk about. But when if people aren't talking about, like, they're not having an authentic conversation about this, then people aren't going to realize that it is so important
right, exactly.
to sit there and listen and move forward and put those things into action so that doesn't happen.
Yeah, no,
So
yeah, yeah, it's
that I
definitely
want to keep the
it's
fun out of everybody's.
yeah, I mean, it's definitely eye-opening too, and um when you hear your story or stories like yours, it really makes you think, like, okay, what am I, where could maybe I tighten up, a little bit,
Mhm.
maybe where can I do better and things like that. So, I mean, I'm glad that you came on and did this, and I hope you continue to tell this story. I hope everybody always continues to tell their stories, because sometimes it's just one, it just takes one story for somebody to hear and go, like, oh yeah, or maybe they had a near accident or fall or whatever that they just kind of brushed off, but they hear a story like yours and they go, wow, like mine could have been way worse or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, if we look at what the outcome is and where I am right now, if people really heard what I heard from people who saw the video, you know, um, that this conversation is just, like I said, they said it's a miracle, but this
yeah,
conversation is really one to just take in for anybody listening, because people thought I died that day,
yeah,
and luckily the people that thought that, they called somebody who was like, oh, actually she's at home, like, and so but I mean, it's to know that that's what it looked like on the video is
yeah,
crazy to me.
yeah. were
It's
you,
just, I have no idea. All I know is I was up.
yeah,
So
were you like knocked out, or was it just like you had the wind knocked out of you?
um I know I had the wind knocked out of me. The lady said it took me a little bit to come to, so I don't know what that means. I landed on my back, head, and neck. Um, so who knows?
Yeah, could have
But
been, could have been.
and then Mason was just like, "You landed like a pancake." So,
Yeah.
like,
Well,
but
it's better than saying you landed like Peter Griffin, whenever he falls on Family
oh yeah,
Guy. Yeah.
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 Yeah, he was like, "You land like a pancake," and he's like, "That lady." What did he say? He goes, "Oh, that lady, mother birded you," is what he said,
Wow.
and I was like, huh, "That's a," but I get it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but I
It's
mean,
called CPR, Mason. It's yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
she was doing a sternal rub. Everything's fine. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
but that there tells me like I was not breathing.
Yeah.
Like and her like when I met her and her husband, I met them that Friday after I fell because I wanted to thank them. And I mean, of course, she was like in tears when she saw me, but she
Right.
said that they heard me fall, they heard me, and then all of a sudden it was dead silent. Like there was no sound, and she was like, "We ran so fast. I was on dock 4, they were on dock 3," and she said by the time she got to me, I wasn't moving, I was unresponsive, I wasn't breathing, and I was like, "That's just wild." Like so a lot of the stuff that I know of like what happened is because people have told me,
Yeah.
or I was just thinking about dead fish between the dock and the boat. So
Yeah. Well, at least your first words when you came to was like, I didn't land on the dead fish, did I?
yeah, I think my first words were, "Oh," she's like, "What?" She's like, "What's your name?" And I was like, "Where am I?" And she's like, "Yeah, but what's your name?" And I told her my
Yeah.
name, but I didn't. It's just still crazy. Like I didn't know my last name. Like who doesn't know their last name?
That's
This
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's nuts, man.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, listen,
but
I'm glad that you're still here with us.
thank
Um,
you. Me too.
thank you for reaching out to me and asking about coming on and talking about this because I think it's something that was, or I think it's something that's definitely important to talk about. So, I'm glad that we were able to kind of talk a little bit at MTE and kind of,
Mhm.
get this scheduled in and everything like that. I hope everybody that listens to this definitely, um, at least for the most part, just, thinks a little bit more next time about, doing some sketchy shit. I mean, like, what's the
Yeah.
TikTok thing? Go to do some sketchy shit, or whatever. Like let's just be right.
That's another.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 If anybody wants to reach out to you and maybe get some more information or just talk to you about like everything that happened, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you? If
I mean, you can reach me on my Instagram or Facebook, which is Elite Marine Protection. Um, I mean, I have a website which will direct you to my
Yeah,
Instagram or Facebook, and that's just
okay,
elitemarineprotection.com. Um, or if you really want to you feel like just buckling down and writing that 1,000-word essay to me, you can pop into my email, and that's just info@elitemarineprotection.com.
okay,
So,
yeah. No,
yeah.
that's awesome. Well, listen, Angela, I appreciate you coming on and doing this. It was
Thank
definitely
you. Thanks
definitely
for
very
having me.
interesting and educational. So it's made me think a little bit more. And yeah, I mean, if you ever come up with like some new ideas or some new ways of doing things or something like that, and you want to come back on and kind of do like a revisit or whatever, let me know, and we could always kind of revisit, maybe where you've made some tweaks or things of that nature. Maybe learn some things or whatever that's a little bit different that might help people out.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'm always trying to figure out better ways anyway to do things. So,
No, that's
yeah,
awesome. Yeah.
safer. So,
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, you enjoy the rest of your evening. Again, thank you so much for doing this, and
yeah.
we'll chat soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Take care. Bye. Hey,
See
don't
ya.
go anywhere.